It's great to have you with us from wherever you're tuning in from. For more information about Elevate Church or to contact us, head to our website elevatechurch.me and take us wherever you go by downloading our Elevate Church AU app. We hope this message inspires and helps you to take your next steps in your journey.
Well, great to see you, and extend Louise echo her welcome to those of you here for the first time. Great to have you here. Now, a couple of years ago, Louisa, my wife, and I became parents to a couple of, they're super cute, pretty cheeky little puppies. This is little Rumi, this is little Ari. They don't always get along as well as this photo would suggest. Anyway, but we got them very young, and those of you who are parents know the journey. You're getting them de-sexed, and then after getting them de-sexed, they have to walk around for a couple of weeks wearing the cone of shame. You all know what I'm talking about. It's just not fun. They didn't enjoy it. No, there's no winners wearing the cone of shame. And look, it's not a new thing. It's not unique to us. Parents all around the world have had to deal with young puppies or kittens wearing the cone of shame. So actually, I've come across a few ways that some parents have just tried to soften the blow a little to their puppies when it comes to the cone of shame. So here's an option. Who doesn't like a big bucket of fries? Jaden, this next one's for you, my brother. This one here. We can just soften the blow there. But look, if you really want to soften the blow, then you can do what this guy did. He decided to make himself a cone of shame, so Puppy didn't feel so on their own. Oh, come on, man. This guy, he deserves an Oscar for this one. And cat parents, don't think I've forgotten about you, because here I present to you Catman. And this is so, anyway, you can do with, these weren't necessarily intended as suggestions, but you can do with them what you will. But the reason I talk about this idea of the cone of shame is I actually come across people very, very regularly, humans, who are walking around in life metaphorically wearing the cone of shame. And there could be a whole bunch of reasons behind, one or more reasons behind why some people are walking around wearing the cone of shame. Feeling shame because they got rejected at some point in their past. They got overlooked. Maybe they'd been put down. This one is one of my worst ones, being betrayed. Maybe walking around with the regrets and the memories, and even often the consequences of some poor decisions. And one of the things I want to just really make sure we understand is Jesus' followers are not immune from this, are not immune from feeling like we're walking around with a cone of shame. In fact, oftentimes Jesus' followers add another one to this list, this idea of feeling unworthy, of knowing that Jesus loves them, loves us, but thinking, yeah, but I'm pretty broken. I'm still pretty messed up. I don't feel worthy of Jesus' love. I don't feel like I'm living up to his standards. And then just that adds another layer to this idea of feeling shame. Now, when our puppies were walking around with a cone of shame, there was a very noticeable difference in their behavior. For the time that they had that cone of shame on, they were walking around with their eyes down, walking around just like mopey. And here's this one, actually limited. Like this thing that sort of isn't meant to be that intrusive. Just the fact that it was on caused them to be living limited. And I would put it to you that humans walking around with the cone of shame have some of that exact same stuff going on. Eyes down, mopey, feeling and living limited. But look, there was no getting around that for the puppies. It's kind of like a thing. I know that God's best isn't for us to ever have to wear the cone of shame. But if you feel like you've ever been wearing the cone of shame, or even maybe today you think, yeah, that I can identify with that. Just like it was with our puppies, it's not intended to be a permanent fixture. And what I want to share with you today is there is a path forward. There's a pathway for you to be set free from shame. Now, let me just qualify one thing. There is a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt typically is tethered to something that we did, something that we said, like a thing, an action, an event. Shame tends to kind of permeate a lot more of who we are, not so much just what we did. It might have been triggered by what we did, but we start to identify ourselves as being filled with shame. Guilt says I did something bad. Shame starts to kind of convince us that we are something bad. Now, interestingly, Princess, you may have studied this out, psychologists have actually identified that in the last 20 years, guilt is actually on the decrease in society, whereas shame is actually on the increase in society. But here's the thing. Let me kind of double click on that. I don't think that should come as a surprise to us, because more and more people don't have a framework for right or wrong. So if you don't have a framework for right or wrong, why would you ever feel guilty? Because you're not even sure it was wrong. And you know those people, you're looking at them and you're thinking to yourself, aren't you embarrassed? And they're like, why? Why would I be? However, shame, the same psychologists have pointed out, is on the increase. And people really asking questions about who they are and what they're created for, and whether there's a real purpose and meaning to their lives beyond the stuff that's got them kind of trapped. And I'm going to say it again. If you're somebody who's experienced that or are experiencing that, I want to give you the good news is there is a pathway forward for you to be set free. And there's a power for you to be set free. And God calls that power grace. His amazing grace. So today we're launching a brand new series called Set Free. And over the next few weeks, we're going to just take a bit of a dive into some of the letters that Paul wrote. Now, Paul was a leader in the early church. Some of the letters that Paul wrote to churches 2,000 years ago while he was physically in prison. So Paul was a very high-powered, effective Jewish religious leader. He was kind of one of the people leading the charge on persecuting Christians, who the Jewish people kind of saw as a threat, or the Jewish religious leaders, I should say, saw as a threat. Paul had a radical encounter with Jesus, literally in a moment, on a particular journey. And out of that radical encounter with Jesus, Paul had a radical conversion from taking all of his horsepower to persecuting Christians to actually becoming one of them and ultimately becoming a leader in the early church. He was kind of like an entrepreneurial guy, setting up churches and raising up leaders, and then he would write to them. But for Paul's conversion, life did not all become rainbows and lollipops. In fact, quite the opposite. He went from being esteemed by the religious leaders to actually being hunted, persecuted, and imprisoned. So he spent a lot of time in prison, and he wrote these letters. Now, when you read these letters, there are words that Paul uses on repeat that we don't necessarily associate with prison life, even if you've only just watched them on TV. He talks a lot about joy. He talks a lot about freedom. He talks about God being worthy of praise. And one of the things that we can take away from Paul is the reminder that not all people who are free out in the wild are actually living free. And then not all people who are imprisoned are actually living like they're in captivity. Because you can put someone in prison physically, but that doesn't mean their soul and their spirit has to be living like it's in prison. Or we can be out in the wild and yet have our soul and our spirit feeling like it's in prison. So I'm going to drop us into one of these slices that Paul wrote from prison. There's a few, so keep showing up over these next few weeks. This is a letter that Paul wrote to the church in Ephesus, which is in modern-day Turkey. I'm going to drop us into chapter 2. Now again, remember, every one of Paul's letters, starting today, that we're going to drop into over the next few weeks, every single one of them, Paul was writing them from prison. Not from the Starbucks cafe, from prison. Understand that. Because you have to just remember that. Because the words he writes doesn't sound like somebody is writing them from prison. Oh, life's terrible. Oh, same meal again tonight. I chained to this guard, Fred. I hate Fred. Like, there's just no evidence in his writing. In fact, it's the opposite. So just remember that. Not everyone who's in prison is living like they're in prison. Once he's right, so understand, writing this to a church. He's writing this to Jesus followers in a church. Now I want you to say this morning the words that are underlined and bold with me, just to make sure you're defrosted and paying attention. Ready? Once you were dead because of your disobedience and many sins, but God is so rich in mercy, and he loved us so much that even though we were dead because of our sins, he gave us life when he raised Christ from the dead. It's only by God's grace that you have been saved. Paul, right up the top here, identifies the fundamental problem. He didn't say once you were having a bad day, once you were feeling a little bit sad, once you got overlooked for that promotion that you felt you deserved, but Billy got it instead. Stupid Billy. He identified the fundamental problem that you and I were faced with, staring down the barrel of, that once we were dead. D-E-A-D, dead. Which is why I regularly say and remind us, Jesus did not come to this earth to make bad people good. He came to this earth to raise dead people to life. That's the fundamental problem. Now, if the fundamental problem was that we were dead, it's no wonder that so many of the things that we grab for to try and fix the problem don't actually work, because they don't address the fundamental problem. In fact, this is God's reminder. There was only one way this was going to get fixed. God, by his grace, by Jesus dying on the cross, by Jesus taking our sins upon him and then being raised from the dead, it's only by God's grace that you've been saved. God saved you, say it with me, by his grace. When you believed. It happened. It was a miracle. Some of you remember the place, the date, the time where you put your faith in Jesus. Jesus, I put my faith in you. I believe who you are, who you say you are. I believe that you, and I ask you to forgive me for my sins, and I thank you for loving me. I thank you. Some of you can remember that. That happened when you believed. But you can't take credit for this. It's a gift from God. Ready to join in? Salvation is not a reward. Not only are you not good enough, we didn't have to be good enough. It's not a reward. It's not based on performance. It can't be earned. It's not something we can take credit for the good things we've done. No. So none of us can boast about it. Now, here's the thing. And if you remember nothing, if you learn and remember nothing else this morning, I want you to hopefully learn and remember this, what I'm about to say. If you nothing else, I don't remember puppies and cone of shame. I don't remember anything about being dead. It's this. And I make this point because I come across this same question and I answer it essentially the same way. And the question is, and I get asked by Jesus followers, people who have put their faith in him, people who know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are forgiven. Know for a shadow of a doubt that they have been saved. Know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's by God's grace that they've been saved. I get asked this question by those people, right? Regularly. And the question is, if I'm saved, and I believe I am, if I'm forgiven, and I believe I am, then how come I still struggle with some of the same things that I struggled with before I asked Jesus to forgive me? Like, shouldn't that have been like fixed? Shouldn't I have been zapped? You know, like God's wand and a big cosmic abracadabra? Like now, God can fix stuff in an instant. God has fixed stuff in an instant, so don't ever presume he won't. But here's my experience. More often than not, God doesn't fix stuff in an instant. I mean, come on, it would be nice. Wake up tomorrow, no struggles. You remember them, and yet I don't have them today. And here's how I answer this seeming dilemma. And it's to say that salvation saves us from the penalties of our past, but it doesn't save us from the patterns of our past. Those are two different things. You might have taken 10, 20, 30, 40 years to get good at that stuff. Like your brain is so hardwired because you were doing it. You were doing it and you were great at it. And so, but here's the good news. It's a process. So stop beating yourself up just because you still struggle with some of the same stuff you used to struggle with. The great news is the same grace that saved you is the same grace that will help you continue on that journey. But it will take time, and I'm going to talk about that. It will take time, and it'll take a few other things as well. Stop beating yourself up, and just for the record, stop beating other people up, you judgy Christians, because other people aren't as perfect as you are and as great as you are, and they don't deserve to wear the shirt like you do. No, now, we're not like that, but I'm just saying, those people exist. And so, salvation rescues us from the penalties of our past, but it doesn't actually solve the patterns of our past. That's a different thing. Now, let me also highlight, don't use that revelation as an excuse to just keep on doing it. Well, come on. I mean, it's just who I am. Oh, my dad was like that. My grandfather was like that. And all of those things might be true, but there is a grace for you to be set free from that, from the patterns of your past. They may be your history. They may be your experience. They may be the reason why you lied to cover your tracks. They may be the reason you exaggerated to look more impressive. They may be why you let jealousy get the better of you. Maybe why you let down a loved one. The patterns of your past, maybe why you lost your cool and let those words fly. And you're like, can't take it back. The patterns of your past may be the reason you were unfaithful. Maybe why you let prescription pills become a habit. Maybe the patterns of your past started when you told God that time that you were never going to do it. And then you did it. And then you told God, well, I'm never going to do it again. And you did it again and again and again. And you just about got an Olympic gold medal for how good you got at it. I mean, these things are reality. The penalty of our past and the patterns of our past. Do you understand? They are two separate things. But the thing that links them together is God's grace is available to every single one of us for both of those things. We are saved by His grace. We didn't earn it. We couldn't have earned it. We can't boast about it. And He extends His grace to us, made available freely, to help us journey and progress beyond the patterns of our past. So really, the honest assessment, if someone was to say to me, you know, how does this work, grace, and like over here being rescued from the penalty of my past, and now I'm staring down the barrel trying to get beyond the patterns of my past, how does that work? Here's the thing. The important thing, and this is like the honest, like this is the adult version of this. God, by His grace, gives us the potential to grow beyond the patterns of our past. But it's not going to necessarily happen automatically. In fact, it often requires a whole lot of obedience, because disobedience got us on the wrong side of that line. It's going to take a whole lot of obedience. It's possibly going to take a few other things working together, and it's possibly going to take quite a bit of time. So actually, God's grace gives us the potential to get beyond the patterns of our past. I mean, that's great, right? Yeah. But you know people who have not taken a hold of that potential. Again, I'm not judging them, but I'm just saying it's a different thing. But that's the great news. That grace is available. The potential is there. You can let that happen. We can let that happen. Now, you got to let God pop the hood. I mean, I crack up laughing when I hear people tell me they're trying to hide something from God. I'm like, wait, what? So you got to let Him pop the hood. And you got to let Him poke around, and you got to let Him pull some things apart, and you got to let Him rebuild some stuff, and you got to let Him rewire some stuff. And it's not always going to be easy or pain-free or convenient. It's not even going to, this one, well, that's not how I would have done it. Yeah, we know how you would have done it, and where that gets you. So give God, who's kind of better at this than you, give Him so you need to do that. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be necessarily automatic, and it's not necessarily going to be pain-free. And then you've got to do the work. We've got to do the work. I've got to do the work to unravel and then rebuild it. So you've got to listen to the podcasts and read the books and enroll in the course and show up to the counseling session and get deeply embedded in community. Then you are more likely, because you've positioned yourself, more likely to start experience the potential that was available to you all along to help you grow beyond the patterns of your past. Are we good? Yeah. Understand? Yeah. Okay, good. 6 people understand. All right, well, 6 is better than 5. It's just like, I'm telling you, literally, I've seen like the lights go on when I've had that conversation with people. Penalties, patterns. So 2 psychologists who have written some books that are some of my favorites and most influential is 2 guys, John Townsend and Henry Cloud. I think I meant to call them Dr. John Townsend and Dr. Henry Cloud. They actually put out a pretty amazing insight. It's not a formula. I'm going to show it to you in a second. It's not a formula, but it does clearly identify the key components for how growth actually happens. And according to them, it looks like this. Grace plus truth plus time leads ultimately to growth. So let me quickly define terms here. Grace is like unconditional love and acceptance. Okay? And we love that. Who doesn't love that? We love that. And then truth is how things really are, or how things really ought to be. And I know some people who lean very heavily on one and ignore the other. And that's a problem. In fact, John described Jesus as being full of grace and truth. Not 50-50, not 90-10, not one or the other, full of grace and full of truth. So here's a couple of problems. I can say there's ditches on both sides of the road. Let's walk down the road of grace and truth in their full measure. But if you're only on the side of the road that's truth without grace, you start to be a dealer in judgment and shame. Because you're all about what's right, and you're all about what should be, and you're all about what people should do, and there's all truth, and it's true. But here's the problem. Without grace, it just drives patterns underground. It causes shame. It causes people, you don't become somebody that other people can confide in, because they know you're just going to do this. Boom. And unload both barrels of the truth gun on them. And they're like, oftentimes the fact that people feel shame is because they actually know what is true. Like, if I didn't think it was true, I probably wouldn't be feeling like I'm feeling. So if we're just all about truth, but no grace, we become those people. You become those people in your office. You become those people in your family. You wonder why you stop getting invited out for the drinks on Friday night, because you sit there with your little mineral water spritzer judging everybody because they've had three. I'm just saying, like, truth is truth, but truth without grace leads to judgment and shame. But here's the other thing. Grace without truth, I'm just going to call that license. Anything and everything goes. It's all permissible. It's not all beneficial, but it's all permissible. But here's what happens when it's all grace and no truth. I'll tell you what happens. Chaos. Like I do get to meet people that are all grace and no truth, and then life goes to, and I lovingly say to them, what did you think was going to happen? There's no mystery here. Oh, I just fell into sin. No, you didn't. You walked into sin day after day, step after step, because you didn't think truth mattered. So both of them are a problem. But when we put these two together, and I'll just add the bonus thought, if you haven't built a platform of trust with somebody, just keep the truth piece to yourself, because it's not even going to work. But if you've built the platform of trust with someone, then you're like, you know what? This is how I say it. If I saw something in your life that was like a bit less than God's best, would you want me to tell you? And the adult answer is, yeah, I really would. That'd be great. Thanks. And then I do. I don't just come in again with my slip them some mushrooms. All right, so let me point, and then time. Again, time. It could have been decades in the making. I hope it's not going to be decades in the undoing, but it might be weeks. It could be months, and it might possibly be years. But keep with it and don't beat yourself up. Now, our great friend Rob Mason wrote this book, Shame Off You. Some of you have read that, I know, and been incredibly helped by that. It's a resource we have available for sale in our resource corner, and I strongly recommend it. Just a question for you here. While I've been talking about shame, is anybody, you are thinking of somebody, and I don't mean your husband, thinking of someone that you're like, there's someone that in my sphere, out there, not here, not anyone here. If you're here, buy the book for yourself. But you're thinking, you know, I know someone that could really benefit from this topic. Is anyone, and if I gave you this book, you'd give this book to them. Is that anybody? It's free. There's no catch. Thank you, Kelly. You was like, you were waiting for the catch, right? See, Kelly and I, we're tight, mate. There's no catch. And I've read it as well. I know you have. You've read it. You've done the exercises. You recommend it. And there you go. So, but, hey. Actually, you already have a copy, so you're good. Just make sure you give it away, all right? I'll be checking. Now, two things real quickly just to end. Studies indicate that we look at our phones, on average, 50 to 200 times a day. And some of you are like, that much? And some of you are like, that's all? Did he say a day or an hour? Anyway, point being, we look at our phones a lot. So here's what I want to encourage you to do. Part of this journey is get the Bible app. Get the Bible app. If you look at Instagram more than you look at the Bible, guess what? You probably got your priorities a wee bit out of whack. Get the Bible app. It's available for free on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. It's got just things like a verse of the day. It's got a guided study. It's got a little sort of prayer around that. That just opening the homepage every day will cost you about 5 minutes. Did somebody say toilet time? And if you want to take a slightly deeper dive and you've got the Bible app already, scan this QR code. It'll take you to the feature on the Bible app called My Church. And it'll allow you to sign up to have Elevate Church as your church. And what we do is every Monday, we publish a reading plan around the topic that we've preached on. So tomorrow, we'll be publishing a reading plan. And the reading plans are about sort of 5 days worth of content around shame. So that'll be on. But you have to be a part of that to access that. I'm just saying, like, this is, when you read God's word, you will be exposed to grace and truth in their full measure. And that'll really help you grow. And then also, we have an app, Elevate Church AU app. There's no code because it's the code that's on the seat backs in front of you. If you've ever wondered, what does this code do? Well, Curious George, scan it and find out. It'll take you to our app, and we've kept it reasonably simple in terms of the features on there, but the things that will benefit you during the week. It has our online experience there, so it's sort of a living room version of what we do on a Sunday, which you can take with you, obviously, during the week. It has our podcast in there, which is actually the Sunday live version of the message, so it's got a sort of a different vibe. You can take that with you. As I like to tell people, turn your smartphone into a Mark phone, and your life will be better. Your life will be better instantly. And it's also got Elevate group notes in there. Now, I strongly recommend, if you're not part of an Elevate group, connect into an Elevate group, because this idea of getting involved and embedded into a community of people who are going to be your biggest cheerleaders as you're on this journey. And when we get together with our Elevate groups, we talk about the notes that are in the app based on the message. But here's a little hack. You can use the Elevate group notes as your own personal study during the week. Because in the Elevate group notes, it's got some of the Bible verses we use, the big ideas. It's got some questions. In fact, you can even get together with somebody at a coffee shop and do a little 30-minute study together to encourage one another using our Elevate group notes as a resource. And even though it's priceless, it's free.
We really hope you got a lot out of this message. If you live in the Perth area, we'd love for you to join one of our live experiences. For times and directions, as well as information, head to our website, elevatechurch.me. For those of you beyond the Perth area, we'd love for you to connect with our online experience, which premieres every Sunday via YouTube and Facebook Live, and on demand immediately after. And to partner with us to reach more people by giving financially, head to our website elevatechurch.me and also download our Elevate Church AU app.